I remember I was a couple years into my practice, and I started working with a man, and he had moved home with his parents. He was suicidal. He was like, if I can't fix this, I don't want to be here anymore. You can continue to engage in whatever sex act is happening, penetration, blowjob, hand jobs, and you just change your breath, and within 3 full breaths, your arousal has dropped 2 levels. Now that is like PhD level control of your body. So it's actually learning how to breathe into your act. If you were bearing down to go to the bathroom, like pushing out to go to the bathroom, you want just the slightest energy going into on the inhale. There is a deep, deep shame around how quickly this is happening. And oftentimes there can be even a turning away from sex and like a pulling back from ever wanting to be intimate at all, because it brings up so much shame and discomfort and embarrassment for them.
Did you know that breathing into your pelvic floor can help you last longer in bed? Or that the porn industry star ratio is about 7 men to 300 women, and it's warping our understanding of real sex? In today's episode, you'll learn why asking, "Do you like this?" kills intimacy, and what is the connection between anxiety and arousal that's trapping so many men in cycles of shame and premature ejaculation. And lastly, why 15 to 20% of marriages become completely sexless. Welcome back to the Rena Malik MD podcast, your trusted guide for leveling up your health, sex life, and relationships with evidence-based tools. I'm joined by Key Ranken, the Washington, D.C.-based sex and relationship coach. She's been improving sex lives around the world since 2010. With her master's in counseling psychology and as co-founder of BetterSex.org, she's developed a groundbreaking sex as meditation workshop series and created natural systems that help men overcome everything from premature ejaculation to sexless marriages. If you're here and you've enjoyed this podcast in the past, do me one solid favor. Leave a rating or review on Apple or Spotify. It is completely free and takes just a couple seconds, and it helps us reach more people around the world who can benefit from all this education. And one quick reminder, if you want to learn my top 10 tips for maximizing pleasure, make sure to download the Better Sex, Better Life ebook at www.remalikmd.com, our pleasure. Now, let's get into it with Key Ranken. Key, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here. I'm so excited to talk about so many different things with you. And you are I listen to so many of your podcasts on other episodes, and I'm just really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, good. So, you've worked on premature ejaculation stamina, and there are obviously so many myths in this area. What do you think is the single most harmful myth that you've heard that people sort of internalize about this?
I would say, actually, one of the things that I see people doing the most, that's this myth, is that you can clench and tighten your pelvic floor in order to stop ejaculation. And so what ends up happening is the guys that are struggling with early ejaculation, as they move up their arousal curve, they're tightening their pelvic floor, which is actually just sending them faster up the arousal curve into orgasm. And so these cycles, these patterns, should just keep going and going and going. Because there's this idea, if I can just tighten my Kegel muscles or my pelvic floor enough, I can stop the ejaculation from coming out, and then it just creates that system where it goes over and over again.
Well, I think there's some sort of there's some BOF feedback, right? That you can do to sort of calm, sort of put the brakes on, right? Because that's what pelvic floor physical therapy does. But I think it's different, right? These people are just clenching.
Yeah, and there is in the Taoist traditions, they talk about a certain area you compress that would stop the ejaculate, which sends the ejaculate into retrograde. And there's this whole other path over there. But the folks that are struggling with early ejaculation mainly need to relax their pelvic floor. I believe if they went and saw a pelvic floor specialist, they would say, "You're over-tightening," and all the time, constantly over-tightening, in a state of stress and tightness. Yeah, and so the idea is that we actually don't want to tighten any part of the pelvic floor. We want to learn to be able to relax it and just let it chill out and enjoy the experience versus tightening through the experience.
Right. Right. And I think it's interesting when I see people who sort of are doing a lot of edging, right? Which is essentially sort of the same thing almost. I find that they also develop a really tight pelvic floor because they're tensing to hold. And then they start seeing issues in other areas, like they might get pain with ejaculation, pain with erections. They might get, sort of urinary frequency, urgency, constipation, those sorts of things because they've now sort of trained their pelvic floor to be tense all the time.
Right, that's fascinating. It's very rare that anybody who's exploring edging shows up in my office, because I normally have people who are like, I can't come, or my cock doesn't work, or I come too quickly. So I actually don't ever get to really see most of those guys. And that's fascinating to learn that.
Well, I feel like some of the premature ejaculation or rapid ejaculation patients, they will sort of try to stop-start, right? Which is sort of like edging. It's not exactly the same, but they will try to do some stop-start or some squeeze techniques to sort of get them to the point of climax, but not get there and train their bodies a little bit. Yes. How do you feel like that plays into things for patients you see?
Well, I think in general. So when I started working about 15 years ago, and I decided, okay, the reason I ended up in sort of the male dysfunction space is because I didn't feel ready to take on the huge gamut of things that happen around sex for people. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to pick one area to specialize in. And the early ejaculation seemed like, okay, I knew a little bit about it. I had been with a partner very early on who struggled with what I would consider severe early ejaculation, where the erection almost would go away because there was so much anxiety in the body that he would either just come right away or not get hard. And so I was like, okay, I think I can work with that. So I went and did all the research I could find and try to understand it. And the stop-start method is predominantly what therapists were teaching people. And you don't want to come with that, people, more distraught and ashamed. And there's no path forward for them. And the other thing that I really dislike about the stop-start is there's this disconnection from pleasure, because there's also this stop. And then think about your grandma, right? That's sort of like the joke.
Well, we know that actually doesn't work, right? So there's actually good evidence that especially in men who have premature ejaculation that it actually is very ineffective. 46% of people might see some efficacy. Whereas a regular person, because I think the brain chemistry is slightly different, that in a regular person that does sometimes work. So if you're talking a regular person, sometimes it does help because they're just their brain chemistry and things are functioning normally. Whereas someone who's already struggling, it actually makes it worse sometimes.
Yeah. And what I don't like about it, because what I think about helping folks overcome any sexual area where they're feeling like there's a struggle, I want my hope for everyone is to more deeply connect with their bodies and to more deeply connect with their pleasure. So if I'm saying oh, just think about something else, we're actually now leaving the experience. We're leaving the moment. We're not fully feeling into the pleasure. So I often really want people to go back into their bodies and back into their pleasure so they can experience that moment in time where things are feeling good, actually.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is you need buy-in from your partner, right? And so it sort of disrupts the flow of things unless you make it into something fun, which it could be. But I think sometimes for a lot of people who've never done anything sort of variant or different in the bedroom, they find it awkward and uncomfortable. And so people get frustrated and it doesn't always work. And then they're like, well, what else do I have to do?
Yeah, I would say in general that the idea that stop-start is a thing people should try for early ejaculation is it's not where I would recommend people start at all. Again, it's sort of what is recommended standard protocol of if you show up in a therapist's office, They will recommend stop